you look at a lot of these high-level recruitments that are going on right now, you see an O and you see a G, and this is going to be a Ducks versus Dawgs battle and showdown for some of these top prospects going on as we get closer and closer to signing day at the end of next season in December. The history between these two, Dan Lanning and Kirby Smart, makes this recruiting battle even more interesting. Of course, Kirby is the guy that gave Dan Lanning an opportunity to show what he can be as a defensive coordinator. And then when he really showed that great 2021 defense where Georgia won a national championship, that gave Dan an opportunity to be a head coach. This is a mentor and a student type of relationship. We all know what happened when Dan became a head coach, his very first game against Georgia, and we know how that went. Oregon has certainly gotten better on the field since that matchup. And now Dan has built up his program and a defending Big Ten championship, and Georgia is still the king on the block. Kirby is still the big kid on the recruiting block right now. Like, when you look at the Georgia Bulldogs, the last 3 seasons, Georgia has either had the number 1 class in the country or the number 2 class in the country. They are one of few schools, a handful of schools that have been consistently been able to recruit on the same level or better than the Oregon Ducks the last few seasons. So you combine the Dan and Kirby relationship, which you got to imagine that there is a mutual respect, but also a mutual competitiveness. You want to be recognized. You want to be acknowledged like the tribal chief, right? That's where Dan Lanning certainly wants to be in these battles with Georgia going on down the pike. There's one battle that I think is going to be bigger than all the others, and I think it's going to be a big pivot point, and it could be a determining factor which school ends up number 1, maybe when all is said and done, and that's Jared Curtis. We know he is set to commit to either the Georgia Bulldogs or the Oregon Ducks sitting there on May 5th. Like, there are so many. If you're a message board warrior, okay, and I'm on Scoop Duck every day, okay, and you're going over to the Georgia board, you're going over to the Oregon board, you can drive yourself crazy looking at updates from either of these 2 message boards. Both of these head coaches are all in. And this is really because we've got a commitment date coming up for Jared. I think that really makes this a little bit more high profile, especially in the next month to come. But this is going to be a recruitment, and this commitment of Jared Curtis is really going to possibly define which way these classes really go in the future, because his commitment will turn heads. His commitment will maybe get other people to maybe slide one way or the other. Okay, if you have a Jared Curtis commitment, you're sitting out there in the state of Missouri, and if you're Jackson Cantwell, you'd be like, yeah, I'd love to play with Jared Curtis. I would love to protect the number 1 quarterback in this class right now. So that's one, man, that I would love to see Oregon win. Is it the absolutely end of the world if they don't? Maybe not, but I've kind of talked before about how important it would be for Oregon to land a 5-star quarterback out there. This is the biggest Dan versus Kirby battle. It's going to go all the way to the end, and people say it's neck and neck and could certainly go either way right now. I think if you're Dan Lanning in these recruitments against the Georgia Bulldogs, you need to sell Oregon as the new Georgia and the better Georgia. Now, we are so used to Georgia just being a dominant program, winning SEC titles, winning national titles. It never used to be that way, okay? Before Kirby won his first national championship over there at Georgia, the Bulldogs had just won 1 AP national championship in their history, and that came in 1980. Under Mark Richt, this was a program that came oh so close so many times. Sound familiar? Sounds a lot like the Oregon Ducks, but when they eventually cracked through, when Kirby Smart eventually won that national championship, 1 turned into a ton. And I feel like that's how this is with Oregon, right? They've been knocking on the door. for so many years to be able to kick down that national championship door. But I feel like once they kick down the door, once they get in that room, that's going to be a giant monkey off of their back. A lot of rival fan bases are going to have nothing to talk about during the offseason. That's the whole mantra during these spring and summer months when the trash talk, of course, is going back and forth on the Twitter sphere. But that's how I feel about Oregon. I think that they are in a similar position. Like Clemson is another one of those programs. Remember the term Clemsoning out there? They'd get off to a hot start and they would crumble or in some of these big games and they wouldn't be able to get themselves into a national championship position. But once Clemson won a national championship, right? They won multiple national championships. I believe Oregon is certainly in that mold to possibly be the next of those teams to really break through into that top national championship type of upper echelon in college football. And when you take a look at the makeup right now, like Georgia, great defensive line, great offensive line, great run game. I say the newer Georgia, but I also say the better Georgia, really for offensive talent, right? Quarterback. Of course, we just talked about the recruitment of Jared Curtis, okay? When you talk about these two teams, like, I know there's distance, and I know there's other factors in a recruitment. Money, of course, is certainly one of those as well. But Oregon is certainly sitting in a much better offensive situation. They've put a better offensive production than the Georgia Bulldogs. That's a very powerful program. It's a very smash mouth type of program. But when you look at Oregon, this is a more explosive offensive program. So if you're like a wide receiver, say like, I don't know, Decorian Moore. If you're a quarterback coming in like Dante Moore, you can see why those types of players would go to somewhere like Oregon. And that's what makes this Jared Curtis recruitment so freaking interesting, is because you have the proximity from Nashville down to Athens, Georgia, and that with the Bulldogs. And then you have the offensive prowess that Oregon has been able to do and the type of talent that they've been able to really put into the next level and the type of offenses that they've been able to have these last couple of years in Eugene, Oregon. So Oregon needs to continue to really sell that. They're making strides defensively, but man, Georgia is still a great defensive entrenched program, certainly right now as well. Out of all of the players, I think that this Oregon and Georgia battle exists in, like you look at Jared Curtis, right? Those are the top two. Jackson Cantwell, right? 2 out of the top 3 Georgia and Oregon are for that one right now. Brandon Arrington in the state of California, defensive back. Georgia and Oregon are in his top 6 right now. I think the toughest for Oregon, the toughest battle that they're going to have is Tyler Atkinson. Tyler Atkinson is a 5-star linebacker out of the state of Georgia. And here's the thing, like Oregon has gotten 5-star guys at a lot of different positions. Linebacker is one where they haven't gotten that truly elite player. Tyler Atkinson, who had a really good first visit to Oregon within the last month. So that certainly is in a really good spot right now. But that's going to be a really tough bowl. Getting a 5-star linebacker out of the state of Georgia in Kirby Smart's backyard, that's going to be challenging. Like we found out last year when USC got commitments from the defensive line. We know Kirby Smart is all about defense. Okay, from the state of Georgia, they didn't last very long. So that is going to be the toughest pull. That is going to be the biggest battle. I am looking forward to Ducks versus the Georgia Dogs on the recruiting trail and the battles and see which ways they go.